When you think of everything that exists, your mind likely jumps to the universe. That makes sense. The universe is massive, comprised of galaxies and black holes and planets and billions of stars. It is everything that the common person can see, whether it is through a telescope or through the data collected by professionals studying the observable universe. But there are plenty of theories that state that the universe is not everything that exists. In fact, it could potentially be an infinitesimally small portion of what we know as reality. We could live on a speck of everything that is real, compared to a much more massive, much more confusing monster beyond what we can see. This monster is known as the multiverse. Imagine everything you've ever done. Imagine getting up to go to school in the morning, choosing who to talk to, who to date, and who to love. Imagine saying yes or no to a prom proposal. And now imagine that every single choice you've ever made was different. That is the basis of the multiverse theory. It states that whenever a choice is presented to anyone, anywhere, the universe fractions off into two possible universes. One, in which the first choice was made, and in another, the second choice was made. The butterfly effect compounds massively across these universes. How would things be different for you if you made just a slightly different choice? If you chose someone else to go to prom with, or you went to your second choice university, or bought a different car? What kind of changes would those choices create in your life, and how different would you be as a person because of it? Now, imagine someone from another universe was plucked from their own home and dropped into this one. Imagine that everything is so slightly familiar, but also so completely different. Their shoes are a different color from what they remember. Their ring has an emerald instead of a diamond, or their headphones fit just slightly wrong. This is what many people believe to have happened to a man flying into the Tokyo International Airport in October of 1959. He was traveling with his wife at the time, and upon entering the country, he presented his passport as was required. The border agents were shocked, however, because the country printed on his passport did not exist. Stick around until the end, because this could very well be definitive proof that the multiverse theory is true, and that there are trillions of worlds similar, yet different from our own. While making a choice is a good starting ground for understanding the multiverse theory, it actually isn't the full scope of how it works. Scientists who are proponents of the multiverse theory, or the many worlds theory, believe that every time a quantum measurement is made, the universe fractions off into separate dimensions. Quantum particles exist in a strange state. If you've ever heard of Schrödinger's experiment with a cat, it's a good representation of how they exist. The experiment involved sealing a cat in a box with a device that had a 50-50 chance of either releasing poison to kill the cat or not. Schrödinger argues that the cat is both alive and dead in this experiment until the box is opened. This is how quantum particles work. They are believed to be in several positions at the same time, but are collapsed down into one verifiable location when measured. Scientists believe that each possible location of the quantum particle breaks off the universe into different, parallel universes, where everything is identical except for that quantum measurement. This, of course, results in a massive butterfly effect that propagates across the planet, resulting in universes that are either incredibly different or remarkably similar. For a long time, scientists believed that although these universes were connected in some way, they could not interact with each other. That came to a head in 2014, however, when a couple of different scientists proposed the idea of the many interacting worlds theory. This was based off a slew of different evidence, with one of those pieces being Yofar Vorin. Yofar, or Yosef as he is better known, was a man who arrived in a small village in the district of Lebes in Germany during the year 1850. When the German authorities interviewed him in an effort to find out where he was, they found that the way he spoke German was incredibly strange, with many errors and strange pronunciations. He also spoke and wrote in 2 other languages, which were complete gibberish to the authorities. He said that they were known as Abramian and Lexarian. and that he was from the country of Luxaria, on the continent of Sacria. One of the most well-known examples of this, however, is the man who arrived in Tokyo with his wife bearing a passport that shocked the border patrol to their core. John Allen Kuchar Zigris, also known as Bohodrik Yanisfer, was a 36-year-old man at the time he arrived in Tokyo, and the passport he was bearing spoke that much. In fact, most of the information on the passport seemed to be true. He was a Caucasian man with dark hair and a beard, and his passport listed him as a citizen from the United Kingdom of Torred. The United Kingdom of Torred is unfortunately not a real place, obviously. There is no country in the world with that name, and the passport even listed down to the city. He was supposedly from a place called Infopolis, and had a passport number, serial number, and all of the usual markers of a genuine passport. Keep in mind that while this was happening, it was during a period before rampant airport security and removing of all your items before getting on a plane. Things were more lax, and the only real security measure was the passport shown upon entry to a country. This later led to many people citing the passport as an ineffective security measure. When the man presented the passport, the Border Patrol agent was obviously confused. He had never heard of the country of Torred, though it was of course possible for this man to be from a micro-country that very few people had ever been to. So he called both a colleague and a supervisor to look over the passport, and neither of them had ever heard of the country of Torred either. They eventually led Mr. Yanansfer back into a private room where they were waiting with a map. They asked him to point out where in the world Torred was, to which he replied that it wouldn't be an issue. He pointed to a small space on the border between France and Spain, which made sense to the customs agents because the man was speaking with a fairly heavy French accent. The issue, however, was that the country he was pointing to wasn't named Torred. It was a small principality known as Andorra. Yanansfer began to argue with the customs agents then, saying that the kingdom of Torred was over 1,000 years old, and that there was no such thing as an Andorra, or whatever they were saying. He also stated that he'd traveled through this airport twice this month without an issue, and that he had the stamps to prove it. Upon checking his passport for said stamps, the customs agents were shocked to find that yes, he did have 2 authentic Tokyo International Airport stamps within the booklet. He also pulled out his wallet to showcase the currency that he carried with him. Because he was a business traveler, he carried Japanese money as well as money from several European countries, but he also had very genuine-looking money from a country known as Torred. The officers began to expect foul play, and asked where Yanansfer was staying. He gave them the name of his hotel, which was real, but reported that they didn't have any reservations for a man under his name. He then told them to call his office in Tokyo, who also reported having no employment records for anyone named Bohodrik Yanansfer. The customs agents couldn't exactly just let him into the country without knowing where he was from, and they were still unconvinced that Torred was a real place. So they detained him in a hotel for the night while they were figuring things out, keeping armed guards stationed outside of the room in case of an attempted escape. The following morning, however, they called into his room to check to see if he was doing alright, and to ask a few follow-up questions. When they received no answer, the guards were ordered to break into the room. When they entered, they found that the man from Torred was gone. The room was spotless. It appeared as though nobody had ever been there. When the customs agents went to retrieve the man's wallet from their locked security room in the airport, they found that all of his documents and money were gone. It was, again, as though they had never been there. 3 months later, however, he was found and arrested when he attempted to cash a 200,000 yen check and $140 traveler's check at the Japanese office of Chase Manhattan Bank, as well as 100,000 yen at the Japanese office of Bank of Korea. Despite having caught and detained him, they were never able to figure out if what he was saying was true. He claimed even during his trial that he was from Torred, and when he was sentenced to 1 year in prison, he attempted to commit suicide with a piece of glass that he snuck into court. Why would a successful man attempt to commit suicide so quickly after a decision if he didn't feel like he was lost? Do you believe that he was actually from a different country? Or was he simply a disturbed man that didn't know where he was from? The man from Torred presented a strange and fantastical mystery to everyone who heard about it, and although there is no definitive evidence of whether or not the man actually traveled through universes to arrive in our own, it's still a good thing to speculate over. If crossing between universes is possible, it might be the case that more people than we know about have done so, and have just faded into the shadows of obscurity.